Hello and welcome to another episode of the Green Machine Podcast Tournament Series. Today we're going to be talking about the 1986 Icelandic Triangular Tournament. I'm David, your host, as always, joined by Nick. Nick, it's kind of weird. It's the first episode where I actually was alive for, even though it was only two, and you still weren't alive for this.
No, I was -5. I mean, we kind of speculated that Martin was possibly around for the Olympics in 26, didn't we? But no, I wasn't around for this, sadly. The only kind of footage I've seen of this is on the Charlton years. Remember, they gave out the free DVD, I think, 10 years after he left the Ireland job. So that's kind of all I've seen. But this is kind of like
VHS. Fucking DVD.
No, it was a DVD. It was a DVD
in 1996.
2006. So 10 years after, I think the Independent might have given it out for free.
Yeah. No, sorry. I know when Mick McCarthy took over and his first game was in 96 against Russia, the 2-0 loss. They actually handed out copies of the Charlton era video. I first saw that on RTE and it was brilliant. The video is actually cut. It's got bits cut out of it, but the DVD that you get, that's very rare.
Probably not religious enough or something like that.
No, they actually cut out the Steve Staunton own goal against England in 91 and a couple of other bits with Eamon Dunphy. But I've just watched it so many times. I love that documentary. But yes, you are right. That is the only footage that I think anyone's really aware of. I have the program of this, the actual proper program, but I have no footage whatsoever. If you're listening to this and you have some footage, please get in touch. I would love to go back and watch these games. So basically, what's it all about? What was the Triangular Tournament series all about? It was a tournament that was arranged at the last minute, by the way, to celebrate 200 years of Reykjavik, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Reykjavik obviously being the capital of Iceland. And Ireland were asked, as I said, at the last minute to basically conjure up some sort of squad together. It was going to be held in May. The first game taking place on the 25th of May, which is a closed season tournament, which is an absolute ball ache for Jack, as we're going to discover throughout this episode. Nick.
Was it kind of like a substitute for the World Cup for like teams that didn't get to the World Cup? Like I know it was Iceland, Czechoslovakia, and us. I don't know if Czechoslovakia were at the World. I don't think they were at the World Cup.
Think they were. It was like a very, 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 very poor man's version of the US Cup. You know, when Ireland wouldn't qualify for the European Championships, they'd sort of, they get the bogey prize and go to America, such as 92, 96, 2000. No, it was just, I don't know what it was. Very little information available about it. But yeah, it was just basically, it was lashed together. Czechoslovakia were ready. We were ready. Jack wanted as many games as possible before the European Championship qualifier started in September. Our first game was going to be Belgium away in Heysel Stadium, which would obviously be a 2-2 draw. So he just wanted as many practice matches as possible. Speaking of which, actually, on the 9th of April, 86, there was a proposed game practice match, which Jack had convinced the FAI to arrange. And it was supposed to be between Ireland and a Milan Select 11 in the San Siro. Now, that was supposed to be on the 21st of May. But apparently the FAI agent, or the agent representing the FAI, did not realize that particular game would clash with Inter Milan playing at the San Siro on that day against Roma, a fixture that included none other than Irish midfielder Liam Brady.
Yeah, it wouldn't be like the FAI to kind of mix up their dates or to make a balls of things, would it?
No, but see, this is what I love about doing podcasts about 1980s international football, involving Ireland, because, we were good, but the whole thing was just a mess, wasn't it? Like everything was just, there weren't really rules. There were suggestions more than rules, considering international football, clubs not releasing players.
It was just 80s rock and roll, wasn't it?
It really was.
I missed out on a great era, Dave. This is kind of like you reading me a bedtime story. It's great.
Don't know what Nick is smoking, but okay. I'm here to talk about football, Nick. Don't know what you're here to do, quite frankly. This would be on the back of two games that Jack has already had. His first game was against Wales, a 1-0 loss at Lansdowne Road, 26th of March. And then a little while later, there was another game against Uruguay, a 1-1 draw, both at Lansdowne Road. So Jack thought that a tournament, albeit a small one, would be a perfect opportunity to imprint his philosophy that put him under pressure, as you kids might know today as pressing. The what's it call it? The Gingham press or the Gangman press.
Gegenpress,
yeah, the Gingham press, basically.
And the low blocks and the high blocks and
the low block and all that other bollocks.
The reach arounds and the happy endings and
give and goes and all this shit. Yeah,
all those bits and pieces.
Basically, the Gingham press, it was essentially what Ireland was doing in the mid to late 80s under Jack. It was the same thing, except it was maybe not as cultured. I don't even know it's any different. You know, it's European.
It's more European rustic, wasn't
it? Yeah, I mean, a more European version is always going to be a bit more cultured, I suppose. You can't give any credit to the Irish, but basically, Jack came up with this philosophy where the fullback would play the ball across to into the opposite corner of the opposing team, basically giving away possession, and you would basically force, our guys would press on them and then just force them into mistake, dispossess them around the box and play the football around their box. That was it. But it was none of this fancy knocking around the back. It was get it into the opposition half, chase them down, then play your football. And it worked. Obviously, it made Ireland extremely difficult to beat. Got us to 3 tournaments under Jack. So, you can't say much about that. So just going back to this. So this was a perfect opportunity for Jack to get that philosophy across. And he also wanted to see, Nick, how his players would react and behave in a tournament type atmosphere, how they would react together with that camaraderie. You have to remember, though, this is Jack's first foray into international management and his only foray into international management. So he's obviously used to working with a club, and he had resigned from Newcastle the previous summer in 1985. So I think it was a bit of a culture shock for Jack, really, wasn't it?
I wouldn't say it was a shock that Jack was appointed, but it wasn't overly popular, wasn't it?
No. First game had a banner saying "Go home, Union Jack."
Yeah.
But I mean, he was well regarded. He was a very good coach. He always had done a good job wherever he managed, and obviously being a World Cup winner as well. So he did carry a lot of respect in England, where most of the Irish players played, which was always a good thing to have in the FAI side, because Owen Hand probably suffered a bit with that, didn't he?
Yeah.
And you've seen that subsequently with some of the more homegrown Irish managers. No disrespect to them, but they're not as well known. Where Jack was like royalty. He'd been on Parkinson. He had his own fishing program, his own hunting program. Whoops. He was a personality, a World Cup winner, and he's just a very popular guy, very charismatic as well, especially in the old days. So moving forward. So that proposed warm-up game that Jack badly wanted ends up getting cancelled on the 5th of May. In fact, funnily enough, in April, there was reports, Nick, that Israel were going to take the place of the Milan Select 11 for that fixture.
Yeah.
Johnny Giles.
They were weren't they playing in the Pacific at the time? Weren't they banned from Europe?
Yeah,
and
they
Asia?
weren't. Yeah, and they still didn't qualify.
Yeah.
But yeah, Johnny Giles was, funny enough, favourite to take over as Israel manager at the time, and this was going to be his first fixture in charge. Now, I tried to find some more information about that.
Never knew that.
Yep, I didn't either until I was going through the archives. But Johnny Giles, he went over to Tel Aviv to have an interview with them. Now, nothing obviously came of it. But he was out of football, I think, since 1980, when he resigned as Ireland manager, and Owen Hand subsequently took over. But that all got abandoned anyway. In fact, the straw that broke the camel's back was that talks broke down with Finland. Apparently, it was a breakdown over money. Finland they just couldn't agree on a fee. So basically, that was gone. The warm-up game that Jack so desperately wanted. So that sort of left Jack with a bit of a headache. And as we said, this is end of season, and there's a World Cup about to take place in a month's time. So at this time, Nick, you had loads of clubs: Man United, Liverpool. Obviously, the Ireland team at this time was absolutely just like a galaxy of stars. So all the top clubs in England all had Irish players in them, and pivotal Irish players and prominent Irish players as well. So Jack was also dealing with a World Cup in June, and he's dealing with clubs on end of season tours, funnily enough, and I think like holidays and stuff. So he had an absolute nightmare trying to get a squad together. So he originally had a 20-man squad, which he handed into the FAI, and then he had to chalk one name off straight away. That was Kevin Sheedy. Now, the reason why that was that Kevin Sheedy was carrying a bit of an injury, and he was playing in the Merseyside FA Cup final against Liverpool, which obviously they would go on and lose. And he was a bit of a doubt for that. And of course, Liverpool had Lawrenson, who was a doubt, and Beglin and Ronnie Whelan in the team, which is a bit mad when you think about it.
Yeah.
So
these are all the top teams of the 80s, and they're just loaded with Irish players. Loaded with Irish players.
Like Liverpool and Everton were the two top teams at the time. Like Everton had a fantastic side. But yeah, Kevin Sheedy, as we'll come to about that. So I sent over the squad to you.
Yeah.
And I put some of the clubs and the names. I mean, just an absolute. We're gonna name the squad in a second, but my God, that's a hell of a squad, isn't it?
Oh, it's outrageous, Dave. Absolutely outrageous. I mean, look, a big bulk of that squad is the Italian 90 squad, isn't it? And the Euro 88 squad.
Euro 88, yeah.
But I mean, even you know, the fact that there's even a League of Ireland player in there, you know, Liam O'Brien, I mean, obviously very successful career over in England, but you know, for a lot of people who think that League of Ireland players never ever got a look in the Ireland squad, I mean, this was Shamrock Rovers player in amongst Liverpool players, in amongst Everton players, United players, absolutely world-class players. Liam Brady as well. I mean, you kind of forget about Liam Brady under Charlton. I know we did an episode a couple of years ago that we on his birthday, kind of documenting his career and then documenting how things kind of went south under Charlton. But I mean, Jesus, that's if you think about it, if you look at Italian 90 and Euro 88, this squad for that tournament was probably better than those two teams. Well, I don't know. What do you reckon? I mean, I wasn't born then, but just looking at it on paper, it's
up there. There's one or two probably missing. I mean, the
Ray
players
Houghton.
That were. Well, no, spoiler alert. Ray Houghton is in it.
Oh, sorry, I just seen him there.
Yeah. We'll go through this. Yeah, I mean, I think in 1987 Ireland had that's their strongest ever squad. There's Bulgaria home, the 2-0, and there's the 1-0 in Scotland. That was their strongest ever 11, actual 11. It's just a scary amount of talent. We'll go through it here, actually, but there is a bit of there's one or two
obscure ones.
Yeah, there are. Now you have to remember when Jack came over, he knew nothing about Irish football. A lot of managers did look at the Irish team. Brian Clough was one of them. He was linked with the job, but he couldn't get away from Nottingham Forest. And he said, like, the team that Ireland had was outrageous. And obviously, Jack knew, like, he knew about the Irish team, the Irish players that played in England. You know, he'd obviously managed against with Sheffield Wednesday and Newcastle, you know. But in terms of the Irish game in Ireland, he had no clue. So when Jack came over, funnily enough, he was supposed to have Liam Toohey as his number 2. Now, unfortunately, that didn't work out because Jack fell out with Liam Toohey. Had a massive fallout where Jack took over Team Talk.
That wouldn't be hard.
No.
Two people who are very easy to fall out with, I'd say.
Yeah, two very headstrong people. Now, Liam Toohey, a legend of the game, in domestic game in Ireland, former player, former manager. He was in charge of the youth team. Jack took over the Team Talk, basically totally disrespected Liam Toohey. He resigned. And Brian Kerr and Noel O'Reilly were his 2 assistants. They walked out as well in protest. So Jack actually had to take over the youth team as well for the game against Scotland and Falkirk around this time as well. So Jack really didn't fully understand the game in Ireland, going off on a tangent there. But that might explain.
Did Mick Byrne pick the first squad, or did he pick this squad? Did he pick the Icelandic squad, or was it just the first couple of games against Wales and Uruguay?
He picked the game against Wales. He picked that squad because he said, well, you know the players. And that's why he had Bonner didn't play in the first one. You had Michael Robinson playing up front, you know, who Jack subsequently would sadly fall out with. And sadly, both are no longer with us, which is mad when you think about it.
But isn't it strange? Like, I mean, I know that the kind of the circumstances of him getting the job. I mean, Bob Paisley was kind of favourite, and it went to a panel,
Yeah.
and it was a surprise decision that he was given the job and voted for in the job. But you think, like, if he's going for that, surely if he can't name a couple of Ireland players, I mean, Paisley would have had so many players at Liverpool.
Oh, you would. I mean, as I said, they would have known of
Strange.
the English-based players, but the domestic players over here. So I think Mick Bourne was obviously in his ear, because obviously he was so involved with Irish football. So we're going to go through. You got sidetracked there a little bit, sorry, but we're going to go into the squad. So it's a 20-man squad. This is the absolute original. Now, this is not the squad that travelled to Iceland, but this is what Jack wanted. So in goal, we've got Packy Bonner of Celtic, Jerry Payton of Fulham. In defence, we have Anderson in Newcastle, Jim Beglin, Liverpool, Lawrenson of Liverpool, McGrath, Man United, Mick McCarthy, Man City, Kevin Moran, Man United, who was actually at the time temporary club captain, because Brian Robson was over with England duty. So he was the club captain for an end of season tour for the second time, fully enough. Chris Hughton of Spurs. In midfield, we have O'Brien from Shamrock Rovers, Liam Brady of Inter Milan, Ronnie Whelan, Liverpool, Jerry Daly, Shrewsbury Town, which is a bit strange, but obviously he was at Man United for years. He scored the first goal to Charlton there, funny enough, the goal against Uruguay. Jerry Murphy of Chelsea. That's an obscure one for you there. Tony Galvin, Spurs, Ray Houghton of Oxford. Kevin Sheedy, who had actually won the League Cup that season. Kevin Sheedy of Everton. He was initially left out. Howard Kendall didn't want him in the squad, but Sheedy, and remember this for later on, begged his manager, the late great Howard Kendall, to rejoin the squad. Then he had also the late great Michael Robinson of QPR. He was in midfield. He was originally a striker for Liverpool, but actually would move into midfield when he signed for QPR, and he was at QPR this time. And up front, just the two strikers, John Aldridge of Oxford and Frank Stapleton, Man United, who also would be the captain. So that is a fearsome squad.
Oh, it's outrageous. Even younger listeners, I say they could name most of them. I mean, look, they're like Jerry Murphy's and Mick O'Brien are kind of obscure ones, aren't they? But I mean, a lot of younger listeners would be able to name a lot of that team. That's how good it was.
Yeah. I mean, look at the players that were left out as well. Davy Langan of Oxford as well. Do you know, he was the one that got Houghton and Aldrich involved with the Irish team. Yeah. Davy Langan. I've met Davy Langan. He's an absolute gentleman, and he's obviously fallen in hard times. He did get treated, and I like to always mention Davy Langan when I can, but he was never a braver man. Maybe up there with Kevin Moran in terms of being brave, but like just put everything in for Ireland. A fantastic left back, all action. Like really, really gifted and aggressive, and he was fantastic. He was treated quite shabbily actually by Jack in the end, but he was out with a pelvic strain. And David O'Leary was left out of the original.
Wonder how we did that.
Huh?
Wonder how we did that.
Disgraceful, Nick. But
playing football, I assume.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, playing with balls. No. Anyway, and also David O'Leary was left out. Jack just didn't like him. I've actually got that in the notes. I've got pelvic strain next to Langan, and O'Leary was Jack didn't like him, and he didn't. He didn't. And Leary wasn't happy about that either. He had played about 50 games at club level, and he said, "Well, I don't know why he's keeping me out of team." Basically, it's nothing to do with fitness. I'm fit as a fiddle. I played in 50 games. Kenny Sampson, Arsenal captain at the time, was the only one who's played more than me. So why am I out? And Jack retorted, "Well, I know all about David O'Leary, but I want to experiment." But yeah, he goes with Mark Lawrenson. And
right, what is it with Irish football and managers just not liking players?
Every Ireland manager has somebody they just don't like. And well, I'll tell you where it came from, actually, just to explain to our younger listeners. So basically, in the first game against Wales in 1986, David O'Leary started at the back. Now, Mick Bourne picked that team, and Jack blamed David O'Leary for the goal. Now, we lost 1-0, but we were very good in the match. I've seen highlights of it. If anyone has a copy of the game, please send it over. But we were very good now, very organised, and we were unlucky. Neville Southall broke his leg, actually, in that game.
Jeez.
Yeah, he actually got in contact with me. I asked him, like, did you break it? Do you remember this game? Did you break your leg? I heard you broke your leg in it, or something like that. And he responds, yeah, I don't like to talk about this match very much. I broke my leg in it. I was like, sorry. I
Jeez,
just
you're very well connected, Dave. David Langdon and Neville
yeah.
Southall. You're in great company, really, aren't you?
Have Davy Langan's book, by the way, got the sign as well. I was going to ask for a photograph, but he's very, very shy, very, very shy, Davy Langan.
Or
But
else or else you just make him uncomfortable. Was this
yeah,
another Jim Beglin moment? Was it?
Jim Beglin, Jack Charlton, Bobby Charlton. This kind of goes on with players. I make everyone uncomfortable. That's why we do the podcast remotely, because the lads won't sit with me. But anyway, but yeah, so Jack also didn't like David O'Leary's style of football. He didn't like he didn't like the type of defender he was. Jack wanted someone like Mick McCarthy per se, who Jack knew and would go for points with. Mick was a sort of an old school northern centre half English defender, and Jack loved that. And he also could encompass the put him under pressure style, get up into them, like get that ball up there kind of thing. No one's going to play it out from the back with Mick in the team. He's going to scream at them. And that drew a lot of criticism over the years. We'll talk about that later on. But basically, Jack did not like the style. David Leary was a cultured centre back. He liked to play the ball out. I think he liked to give his man space and time. And Jack didn't like that. It was too risky for Jack, because Jack was the uber pragmatist. And he just, yeah. And in his notes, the Jack Charlton documentary, the
Charlton years.
No, the one that he did after he died.
Oh, Finding Jack Charlton.
Finding Jack Charlton, yeah, they found in his notes like he doesn't rate David O'Leary in it. But anyway, so that was a weird one. But even with those two lads out, I mean, fantastic squad. So he's announced the team on the 8th of May. Everything's fine. And then disaster strikes on the 19th of May. So basically, Liverpool get on the old blower and say to Jack, sorry, Jack, but Mark Lawrenson, the player that Jack loved Mark Lawrenson, he's not coming. Jim Beglin isn't coming. Oh, and Ronnie Whelan won't be available to you, basically, until 24 hours before you're due to fly out. So, sorry. They were on a club tour of Marbella. Now, this is how business was done. This is before the rules that FIFA brought in, where you had to release a player. What's the rule that you have to release a player, otherwise you get suspended, isn't it?
I think you get fined or something like that. But look, but like there's loads of ways around that, isn't there? I mean, there's a lot of mysterious injuries that would be very questionable, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think the player then can't play for his club during that time or something like that. So basically, yeah, and Liverpool were bastards for this. If you ever look at Ronnie Whelan's caps, he has a very low amount of caps because Paisley and obviously Fagan and Dalglish just didn't like to release their players. And unfortunately, this was down to the poor reputation of Irish international football. Because, Lawrenson on Green is the Colour tells a story about the lads being a big gosh for game and just being treated like cattle. So that's obviously going back to the hierarchy, and they're going, fuck that. I don't want you. No, you're a valuable player. Mark Lawrenson was world class. Beglin could have been world class, and Ronnie Whelan was world class as well. And these guys have won, they played in European Cup finals, won European Cups, well, except for Beglin. He was in the 85 final, sadly. But, you don't want those guys going away. So they were like, nah, you're not doing it.
Well, like if you had the option of going to Marbella or Reykjavik, probably go to Marbella, wouldn't you? That was the lads saying, fuck that. Want a bit of warmth.
And I think as well, we have to remember here, and I'm just saying this, I'm a Liverpool fan, but Liverpool had a hell of a season. They'd won the double. I think for the first time ever, they'd won the double, league and FA Cup double. They weren't in Europe at the time because obviously the Heysel ban had come in the year previous. Otherwise, they probably would have won the European Cup too. That team was that good. So they played 50 odd games. They were tired. The last thing that those lads needed was, to be fair, to go out to Reykjavik, but that doesn't help Jack. And he comes out and says it. He says he's not happy. And, he kind of says, well, the lack of communication from the players was maybe the fact that they didn't know about the Icelandic tournament. Maybe he's been a bit kind of facetious there a little bit, but yeah, he's not happy. He is getting a crash course in international management and how clubs pull the old trump card on them, the fact that he paid the wages. But Jack also says he will talk to the players when they come back, just to basically have a chat and see where the head is at, which he does later on, and we'll talk about that later in the podcast. And then, David O'Leary, he's called up. He's called up, Nick. Gets a little ring. It's like, David, fancy coming back.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry, David. That goal against could have happened to anybody. Come back in, mate. Do you fancy a little trip to Iceland? And David O'Leary says, no. Fuck you, Jack. You didn't want to pick me the first. Well, I'm sure you didn't say that. But basically said, nope, you didn't want me. And I booked a family holiday. And I'm taking my family. It's been a long hell season. And they had a bit of a crap season because I think the manager got fired and Terry Neal got fired and George Graham came in. So a bit of a long hell season. And he goes, nah, I'm going on a family holiday and see you later. Jack told him tore into him over the phone, something along the lines, you never play for Ireland again. O'Leary's never gone into exactly what he said, but you can just imagine it. But yeah, O'Leary is out. What do you make of that, by the way? I mean, this is 1986, right? Players are not millionaires. They're comfortable, but they're not millionaires. You know,
no.
What do you think?
It's chalk and cheese, isn't it? I mean, refusing to call up to your country, and when someone like Jack Charlton, I mean, played in the same position as O'Leary, didn't he? And you kind of think, like, as a footballer, if your managers, if a brand new manager is coming in and a guy who's played in your position, surely you want to be impressing him, don't you? But as you said, like, I mean, this is very different times. Booking a holiday for a footballer now, they can probably cancel it last minute. I mean, the amount of Irish players who've cancelled holidays because they got in late call-ups, or their first call-up. Wasn't Paul Green is an example, isn't he? Wasn't he having a family barbecue? He planned a family barbecue in Barbados or something, and had to go to the Euros then in 2012. But probably a bad example, but anyway,
yeah, it's not quite the same, is it?
Yeah,
but freezing our bollocks off.
Yeah, but I mean,
in Iceland.
Yeah, a strange one, and I think it kind of showed the ego of O'Leary in a way, didn't it? Because he knew he was good. I mean, as you said, he was kind of Rolls Royce defender. I mean, I never saw him play.
Yeah, you've
always kind of raved about him. So we kind of said, well, I'm still in his plans, I'm still in his thoughts. But I mean, yeah, I mean, if that happened nowadays, you're looking to impress the new manager, aren't you?
Yeah, I agree with you there. I do think there's the arrogance there of O'Leary a little bit. He'd been playing football. He'd been at Arsenal since 1975. He remained there for another 7 years. Great player, lovely footballer. But yeah, new managers coming in. Jack is really looking for some loyalty there. And okay, you can forgive the Liverpool lads a little bit, playing in all the competitions. But yeah, I do agree there. I mean, you probably should have just cancelled it. But
was it an ego thing though with O'Leary, kind of thinking, well, I'm good enough, and he won't drop me again.
I think it's a little bit. He's probably looking at that squad and he's going, "You've got a lad there from Shamrock Rovers, really?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I know I'm putting words in his mouth. You got a guy there for Shrewsbury Town, really, and you don't have me in." And obviously, they were playing in different positions, but you could easily drop one of those midfield. You don't need 20 midfielders.
Two ex-United players as well, may I add.
Yeah, but so he's probably looking at that going, no, fuck you, like you didn't want me. Now all of a sudden you did. Well, I booked a holiday for my family, so good luck to you. So I have to blame O'Leary there a little bit, if I'm honest. New manager comes in, you want to impress him. I mean, Kevin Sheedy, for example. Fabulous midfielder, like great player, world class. And he begged his manager, and he was playing an FA Cup final, and he begged his manager because he wanted to get in the Ireland, because the competition as well. And don't forget as well, the competition for places in that defence. Like let's go back through it, man. You've got John Anderson, fringe player, but Jim Beglin, that's your left back. Lawrenson, centre back, right back, left back. McGrath, although he would move into midfield. McCarthy, Moran, Houghton,
outrageous talent there, yeah.
Yeah, it's not really, you're not going to walk into that. And, and Sheedy, I suppose, was up against Brady, Whelan, I suppose, well, never mind Jerry Daly, but Tony Galvin, Ray Houghton was 24 at the time. You know, like, he saw the writing on the wall and went, I need to get back in here because that's competition is fierce, the quality. But anyway, one door closes and another one opens, and Mr. Niall Quinn, 20 years old, of Arsenal at the time, is added to the squad. That season, he was actually promoted from the Arsenal youth for a game against Liverpool, in which he scored, and they won, which was a bit of a shock because Arsenal were in the shit at the time. It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, strange one. Like, I mean, to think Niall Quinn was 20 then. Like, I thought he would have been about 13 then because he played for so long. Yeah,
looks so useful, and it's just been around for
just so gangly as well at that age, wasn't he?
He was,
and especially when the shorts were shorter and the kit was a lot baggier and stuff, he just looks like a big tree or something, doesn't he? Yeah,
big lanky schoolboy. So moving forward, 2 days later, another disaster for Jack. Kevin Sheedy is forced out of the tour after his club manager Howard Kendall insisted on a Liverpool specialist to take a look at his knee, thus forcing him out. And now we have to remember, Kendall did not want Kevin Sheedy going on this tour. Sheedy begged, because he was one of the best midfielders in league, and he begged to be included. So Kendall went, all right, fair enough, you're in. And then basically went out, got a specialist, when you can go, but this guy who I've specifically selected to look after your knee, to look at your knee, is going to have the final say.
It sounds a bit like Everton now, doesn't it?
Does a bit, yeah.
When we try and call players up,
it's a bit, yeah. That's right, with Martinez and Koeman. So I don't know what it is Everton have against Irish players. So basically, yeah, that's a funny one. And you have to remember, folks, this is 1986. So there's every chance that this guy probably just got someone out of McDonald's and went, listen, here's a $5. Fucking tell him he's not going. And that's it. I'm not losing him. I'm not sending him on this shit heap of a tour. So obviously this team is starting to ravel a little bit for Jack. So last minute, he tries to call up Mick Kennedy and Kevin O'Callaghan at Portsmouth, but Jack could get in touch with either player. Oh, Jesus. How 1986 is this, Nick? Eh?
Yeah, pigeon messenger and that kind of thing.
Probably would have been quicker.
Telegram.
Almost incredible stuff, isn't it? And then the next day, if things couldn't get any worse, they do. Liam Brady informs Jack that he's out just 12 hours before the team are due to fly out from London, basically leaving Jack with a threadbare squad. So he's no Lawrenson, he's no Beglin, he's no Whelan, he's no Sheedy. Now he's no Liam Brady. Oh, I mean, Jesus, that's a hell of a five-a-side squad, that is. Don't know who you put in goal. Brady was injured for his in the last game he played for Inter. And actually, that was his last game for Inter. His 2-year contract was up. He wouldn't play again. And he's being 30 years of age, I'm on a free. He still has offers from Arsenal, Spurs, and Newcastle, but he at the time feels that he wants to stay in Italy, and he would sign for Ascoli for a year. Brady having played for Juventus, Sampdoria, Inter Milan, Ascoli, having a fantastic career.
I never knew he could have gone back to Arsenal.
Yeah, they were after him. I mean, but I think it was just the rigors of the English game. He probably didn't want it. He probably thought, fuck that.
Yeah.
A few other players actually that would pull out. Jerry Murphy would eventually pull out Chelsea. John Byrne was asked not to be picked because he had a marriage in Finland, which is funny enough. That's a bit mental, isn't it? But Pat Byrne is subsequently brought in for Shamrock Rovers, and Pompey captain Mick Kennedy does get into the squad, and that's literally a day before the first game he joins up. Mick Kennedy we'll talk a little bit about later on, but this will be his first cap. Pompey captain, gifted but a hard bastard on the pitch, and we'll definitely talk about him later. Attendances for this game, Nick, was supposed to be around 10 grand, shall we say, but only managed really a fraction of it for the first game.
Yeah.
There was an attendance of 4,000. Then the game after that was 1,000. Then the final game was like 1.4 thousand. Ah, Jesus Christ.
It's a bit like the Curling Nations League, isn't it? Or the Curling Nations Cup.
Bit like the game between, what was it, Wales and Northern Ireland, was
Wales
it?
and Wales and Scotland, Northern Ireland, I think,
Scotland,
wasn't it?
yeah. It's like
300
300.
or something like that. Yeah.
Jesus, imagine that day. If I was working in the stadium, guarantee I would have been in the section where we're all fucking sitting. That'd be my luck. Um, but yeah, just incredible stuff, really. So we'll get to the. I mean, but as I said, this was down to really, really poor promotion in Iceland and everything. It's just an absolute clusterfuck.
Yeah.
So we get to the first game, the opening game, which is on the 25th of May, a 7:00 kickoff local time, and it puts Ireland against Iceland, the hosts. Paul McGrath would open the scoring for the Republic, and Good Johnson, yes, his dad, Ida Good Johnson's dad, would level things up in the 40th minute before Jerry Daly gets the win, gets the big W and the 2 points on the 84th minute, and there was 4,246 at that game. Some things I found about this, Nick, I thought was mad. You've got the notes here in front of you.
these are
But
good.
this is mental. Niall Quinn, apparently, for the opening ceremony, they got the 1985 Miss World winner, Homfredur Girls Daughter. God knows. Just type in 1985 Miss World winner, and you'll see her. She's gorgeous. She's proper 80s. But they got her in to kick off with Niall Quinn, who was having his first game, his first full start for the Republic of Ireland. And he said, I kicked off the tournament. My first ever touch as a full senior international was tipping off with Miss World. Amazing.
Jesus.
I'd love a photograph of that.
It's very USA 94 kind of stuff, isn't it?
Jesus. Oh, you ever see that footage of I think there's a game like in South America somewhere, and like they have a topless model kicking off the game. And you're like, what?
It's like the one of the girl in the nips scoring the goal on the half volley.
Yeah. See, that you appreciate. There's
Yeah.
a bit of skill and a bit of craft.
Yeah, Graham Souness wouldn't appreciate that now, I don't think.
Don't get started. We had enough of that in the live stream. But this was Jack's third game in charge and his first win. He had one loss, one draw, and a win. So he was getting better. What do you know? And I also didn't realize this as well. John Aldridge missed a penalty for Ireland.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he would actually go 2 years without scoring a goal until it was Tunisia, 1988, which was a testimonial game, fully enough. But he'd have to wait 2 years for his first goal. And he's prolific, man. This guy scored like 30 plus goals for Liverpool.
When was the next time he missed a penalty? Bit of trivia for you.
Wimbledon 1988, FA Cup final.
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, I know. Well, we had the interview with Terry Phelan. He was there that day. He was rubbing it in Aldridge's face there a little bit. And by the way, cheeky little plug, why not? It's our podcast. If you want to listen to that Terry Phelan interview where he talks about that and a load of other stuff, pop on over to greenmachinepodcast.com or wherever you get your podcast, really. Give us a follow. It's all there. What this episode will be as well.
Jeez, that was very organic.
It was, wasn't it? And orgasmic at the same time.
Oh,
yeah.
Multitasker.
Do you know what someone once said to Jack about John Aldridge when he couldn't score? Like literally couldn't score in a brothel. Someone turned around and said in a press conference to Jack after a game, see, Aldridge has another clean sheet.
See, that went down well.
Like a fart in church. I think that's funny. That is proper. Another clean sheet for Aldridge, so Jack. Fucking brilliant.
I'll be using that one the next time we talk about Shane Long.
Jesus. And also debutant Mick Kennedy, the craft and guile, as Eamon Duffy would say, smashes the post and smashes the nose of an Icelandic player on his debut. And there's blood everywhere. And apparently there was like
once Miss World wasn't involved.
No, Jesus.
Smashing.
I thought you meant blood.
Jesus.
But there's a fight now. So basically, they're supposed to have a meal afterwards. The two teams, and no, they had a fight. I know who my money would be on in that one. Definitely, I don't think the Irish lads would be too afraid of that.
Another Viking invasion.
Fucking in reverse, pal. So that's the first game. So Ireland would then play Czechoslovakia. and they would play them 2 days later. Now, Jack would ring in the changes. I'm not going to go through the starting lineup; it's a bit boring. But he is going to ring in the changes, and Stapleton, who was off on the bench, would come off 20 minutes to go and get the winner for Ireland on the 82nd minute and actually win the tournament. That was in front of 1,000 people. Fucking hell. That was still.
Was that Czechoslovakia's first team, or was it kind of a scratch?
No, I think it was the first team. Yeah. Decent side.
So, yeah, they were decent back then. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously not nowhere near our first team.
Yeah.
And Jerry Payton even got a game, I think, in the first game.
To get a goal.
I know. Mick Kennedy on his second cap smashes Czechoslovakia's Milan Luhovi right in the mouth, like mouthful of teeth. And Luhovi is brought in to the dressing room after the game by his manager, and he basically grabs him by the arm, gets Jack's attention in the dressing room, goes to Jack, points to the player with his teeth mangled, and goes, "What are you going to do about this?" And Jack is actually, even for Jack, who was a no-nonsense centre back playing in the 60s and 70s, is actually, yeah, that's not good. And Kennedy on the incident says, "I could say hand on heart that I went for the ball. It's just that I caught him with my elbow. And what made it worse is that his actual tooth stuck in my elbow. I wouldn't mind, but it was a big one, like a horse's tooth."
Jesus.
Yeah.
You won't get that now. If that happened now, Twitter would explode, wouldn't it?
Oh, Jesus. No, just like your man's mouth. I mean, just absolute carnage. This guy, too violent for Jack's Ireland. Incredible. But yeah, this guy was just a little bit on actually Mick Kennedy. I suppose we'll talk about him now. He obviously never played for Ireland again because of his violent nature on the pitch, but he was actually a very good player. And he actually played well in both games as well, but he's a real old-fashioned hard man. And folks, when we're talking about hard men, right, we're not talking about, what's your man's name? Former Man United captain.
Ryan Robson?
From Ecuador.
Antonio Valencia.
Yeah, we're not talking Antonio Valencia.
It's a random one.
Well, I'll tell you why. We're not talking about him getting a little boo-boo under his eye and putting a selfie up saying, "Oh, this is what I do for my teammate."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that sort
of
Neymar.
Neymar did that, didn't he?
Yeah, like got a little scratch in my elbow. You know, this is what I do. Now we're talking violence on the pitch with this guy. This guy was, when we talk about 80s hard man, we're talking Vinnie Jones, we're talking this guy, you know, we're talking Grave Souness. Like, these guys stood all over you. Like, you had to be quick and you had to be clever. You had to be tough as well. Man, these guys they were hatchet men. But a little bit more on Mick Kennedy. He was born in Salford, played for Halifax, Huddersfield, Middlesbrough, Portsmouth, and Leicester, and a few others as well. And unfortunately, he did die at the age of 57 back in 2019. So another member of the team that isn't around with us today. Actually,
a lot of them, yeah. Robinson as well. It's another one.
I know. Yeah. The skin cancer, wasn't it? He went to Spain and he had a great career over there as a pundit. So 2 days after that game, on the 29th of May, Iceland would finish up the tournament with another 2-1 loss to Czechoslovakia, basically leaving those guys last. So a little bit of a shit tournament for them. For Iceland.
At least they finished third. Champions League spots. Third.
Yeah, Champions League football next year for Iceland. Fair play. But yeah, the group table, obviously, Ireland top with 4 points, Czechoslovakia with 2 points, and Iceland nil point for them. So a little bit in the aftermath, as I said, there's no footage of this, and anybody watching this at home has a game, give us a shout, send it over, please. I'd love to watch these games because they're a bit mental. But Ray Houghton said about winning the tournament, got these quotes from RTE. He goes, "It was quite unique, if you like. I don't think we won a tournament before. So if you look through the record books, it was the first time we'd won even a triangular tournament as such. But there was no jumping up and down." Oh, good bet. You've got to remember that this is at the end of a long and hard season. A lot of lads that look forward to getting on holiday. That's what a lot of people don't realize. It was only a short window from finishing to getting ready for the following season, and you want to have a break. That's the thing, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, that's the spirit, isn't it?
That's just, fucking Ireland's first ever tournament. We're now par with England 1966. And, one tournament each. And that's what he says. Speaking of which, the manager of Iceland, I meant to say this actually, was a guy called Siggy Held. And he actually was born in Nazi Germany. And he played against Jack Charlton in 1966 in the World Cup final.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
That's a nice bit of trivia, really, isn't it?
That's what we do here. Siggy Held. Yeah. And just like in 66, Siggy lost.
It's late, guys. It's very late.
It's very late. The Anfield Trio. Yeah, so this is the aftermath here now. So the Anfield Trio, after holding a team get-together in Lillyshaw after the tournament, obviously, the FA coaching school, which Jack absolutely loved and Eamon Dunphy hated. It was another bone of contention between the two. Jack gets the players together to show the missing players from Iceland what he wants. And he actually, at this meeting, pulls Lawrenson aside, who he loves. And Lawrenson was world-class. And basically asks him, do you want to continue to play for Ireland? And of course, Lawrence goes, yeah, of course I do, Jack. Absolutely. Look, it was a long, hard season, blah, blah, blah. Sorry about the club didn't, et cetera, et cetera. Did you know that Mark Lawrenson actually applied to become Ireland manager?
Yeah. That only came up recently, didn't it? Like only about 2 years ago, he kind of revealed that, didn't he?
No, it was revealed 2 years ago on Nelson Road. That's where you saw it from.
Yeah.
I actually bought his book. He has a book out, and I bought it on eBay, and it was released in 1988. And that's where I found out about it. No one really knew about that until I released it. And I actually asked him on Twitter, and he got back to me, and he was going to have Frank Stapleton as his number 2.
Yeah.
And the FAI never even responded.
See why.
You can see why, yeah. But Mark Lawrenson definitely said, no, I want to play Jack. And actually, it's a great story. Jim Beckland says it as well, but Mark Lawrenson tells it better. Where basically John Anderson drove over with Jack because Anderson was playing for Newcastle. Jack still lived in Newcastle, and he knew he was his manager there, and he drove over with him. Basically, he gets more setters to show the Liverpool lads and Kevin Sheedy as well, gets the other squad members that were there. Look, this is the style I want. This is what I want. Kicking into the corner, chase, and he did it for about 5 minutes. And Lawrenson looks over and you see Jack basically has an umbrella. And Jack turns his back to the field with his umbrella and he's practicing his golf swing with the umbrella. Basically, after 10 minutes, he turns around and goes, right, lads, do you know what that's about? And of course, he's talking to Ronnie Whelan, Lawrenson, Beglin, Sheedy, like quality players. And they're like, yeah, Jack, we got it. Grand, now fuck off. And that was it. That was the meeting. So he let those guys off. Sheedy, not so much. But also, funnily enough, Jim Beglin said about that when he actually played the game against Belgium in September, Ronnie Whelan and Jim Beglin were on the bench, and Kevin Sheedy wasn't even picked for that game. And speaking of Kevin Sheedy, he was pissed with Sheedy apparently. But I thought it was actually, unlike the O'Leary thing we mentioned earlier, I really felt bad for Kevin Sheedy here. But Jack said when he announced his squad on the 28th of August, 86, for the Heysel game, just for one match, Sheedy wasn't in it. And he had like O'Brien and he had a Shamrock Rovers player and he had all this kind of stuff in it. No disrespect to them, but Kevin Sheedy. And Jack goes about his omission. Haven't even considered him. Oh, and he wasn't with us in Iceland, was he? And then about David O'Leary, he goes, well, David O'Leary, he wasn't with us in Iceland either, was he? So there was a little bit of needle there, but he would get back into the team, Sheedy, in the 0-0 draw with Scotland in October 1986, and Sheedy would go to the European Championships and actually play alongside Rodney Whelan, funny enough, against the Soviet Union, and they were fantastic together. Did you know that Kevin Sheedy was actually he was at Liverpool up until 1982, and he was actually
he's one of the few to play for both, isn't he?
Yeah, and there was a big loss because he was supposed to take over Ray Kennedy, but Ronnie Whelan took over instead in the centre of the park, because I think Whelan was supposed to be a winger, essentially. And I think they moved him in there. And then basically he went over to Everton. He was fantastic. But those two got to play together in Euro 88. Paul McGrath was injured. And those two bossed the midfield against, and that's the next episode, and can't wait for you to see. That's a proper performance. That, but yeah, Kevin Sheedy got back in. Dale Leary didn't for 2 years. 2 years. Yeah. In fact, David Leary wouldn't get back into the Ireland squad until the World Cup qualifier in 1988, a 2-0 loss against Spain in Seville. And it was only due to an injury crisis, actually, a patched up Ireland team with John Sheridan in midfield and everything, basically got battered by Spain in Seville. And we talked about it earlier. What is it with Ireland managers falling out with media darlings? And this guy was a media darling, especially of Eamon Dunphy. His omission and Mick McCarthy's inclusion, which Eamon couldn't understand, he couldn't get over, drove Eamon mad. And they were actually friends until they traveled together on the plane home, because the press pack and the team used to travel on the same plane back then. I don't know if they still do now.
Until 2002, wasn't it?
Yeah. With good reason, to be fair. And basically, Dunphy wrote an article slating Jack about not picking Eamon Dunphy, not picking David Leary, and why you pick with Mick McCarthy, blah, 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 and shared it out to all the people on the plane. And Jack came out and went ballistic at, this is according to Eamon's book, by the way, Rocky Road, fabulous book if you haven't read it. And he comes out and he calls him the C word. He comes out and says, Oh, I won't say it. I've made a promise to Martin's mother, not to say the C word anymore on the podcast. But he comes out and calls on that, you little
Chelsea
fan. He comes out, you little Chelsea fan. That's it. You were finished. You could have been him, and now you're out, and all this stuff. And that was it. He was just like ostracized from the Ireland team.
It's a bit like Trapattoni, isn't it? Because remember, he went to Portugal on the training camp, and a good few lads kind of pulled out of that, and a good few lads weren't even involved in that, and he kind of held a grudge against him, didn't he?
Yeah,
a few lads like that. There's a few managers where where that was kind of the issue. If they miss something, they miss a friendly or they miss a camp, and it kind of goes back to Charlton in a way.
It does a bit. I mean, but even doing my research for previous, you always see O'Leary out again. O'Leary out. Why is O'Leary out? Why is O'Leary out? Why isn't he playing? He won the league in '89. Well, actually, no, he was back in by then. Bad example. But like why isn't he in? And Jack was just like, for God's sake, stop asking me, David O'Leary. But yeah, that's what happened there. But he did get back in, and it's funny because Sheedy and O'Leary obviously both had pivotal roles at Italia 90, with Kevin Sheedy scoring a goal against England, and David O'Leary obviously scoring the winning penalty against Romania in Genoa.
Yeah, it's a good thing he got back in.
Yeah, it's amazing how it comes out. But Jack always said that he never held a grudge against David O'Leary.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Well, obviously not anymore, but
Nick, send all your hate tweets to Nick.
Prendy M.
Prendy M. Right, folks, we're going to leave it there. Next week is Euro 88, my favorite tournament, Nick, that absolutely shits all over World Cup 2002.
Yeah, well, I wasn't born, Dave, so I can only discuss and overhype things that I was born for. But yes, I'll take your word for it. I believe your idea was fantastic.
And what more do you want? Well, I'm going to be sending you over the footage, actually, so you're going to watch it, and you're going to watch it, pal, and you're going to give me minute by minute analysis, just so I know you've actually watched it.
I'm going to tape my eyes open.
Exactly. So I'm going to send it over to you and Martin, if Martin's actually on the next one with us.
Who's Martin?
Exactly, David O'Leary. Martin. That he literally turned down a call up, goes on holiday with his family, fucks off, and he's just holding the bag.
Kieran Westwood, Prendergast.
No, David O'Leary. David O'Prendergast. That's his name, David O'Prendergast. If you're listening, David. Actually, there's only one David. That's me, Martin O'Leary.
There we go. That was easier.
That's much easier, right? guys, we're going to leave it there. Please give us a follow on the Facebook page, Facebook.com/GM podcast. Give us a cheeky little follow at lansdownroad.ie. Give us a like on whatever network you're listening to us on, Spotify, Google, you name it. And also, if you haven't checked it out already, go over to greenmachinepodcast.com. You can check our archive there. Well, this episode will be available, and every other episode, including our Claire Shine series, our Nick's Love Child 2002 series, the Terry Phelan interview, loads of stuff. Even our live episodes are over on there for you to enjoy. Thank you very much, folks. Good night. God bless.